Do you ever wonder where those camels come from? Or where did they originally came from, their native land? Well, some of them come from different parts of our planet, but they're more knownly to being from the Middle East, right here. There's different kinds of camels, there's different types. There's some that come from Asia, like China or India, but lately in our present world, most of them come from the Middle East, and that's on the other side of the world. But we have some here in America too. We are right here. This is Texas, and some of them come from all the way around the globe, like all this area in the Middle East. So today we have Doug Baum. He is the owner of the US Army Camel Experiment here in Texas. And today he's come to read a story for us and tell us a little bit about his camels. So I hope you enjoy.
Good morning and welcome to the Fort Stockton Public Library's Tales and Tales summer reading program. My name is Doug Baum and I live on a camel farm. You may have seen my camels and me at Fort Stockton or the Annie Riggs Museum for one of the living history events in your town. But today I'm coming to you by video from our farm in Central Texas. And some of the tales we're going to share with you today are about the historical use of camels in the US Army back in the 19th century, over 100 years ago. And a big part of that story took place in your own hometown. But let me introduce you to a couple of my friends. This is Richard. He's one of our family's camels. He's an Arabian camel. That's the kind with one hump. You can see his one hump there. And we've also got Bactrian camels, the kind with two humps. Look, here's Shion right here. Shion's got two humps, one in front, one in back. And the Army used both types of camels, one hump and two hump. I thought this morning I would get out one of my favorite books and share it with you. I'm going to go inside the house and grab the book and we'll start reading. You can see I've got a lot of books at my house, but one of my favorites is this one right here. It's called Camels for Uncle Sam, and it tells the story about the time the US Army used camels back in the 1850s. It starts, the group of men and women paid little attention to the children playing around their feet or to the smells of cooking that drifted out of the town behind them. They chatted quietly, often glancing south where the earth shimmered under the summer sun. Suddenly, a small boy tugged at his father's hand and pointed. Shading his eyes, the man searched the landscape. Nothing moved. The horizon seemed empty except for a pale cloud in the distance. The man squinted. The cloud grew larger, and now a faint tinkle of bells came to his ears. Behind him, people shuffled and murmured excitedly. The camels were coming. The U.S. Army decided to use camels over 100 years ago in the U.S. deserts because no rail, no trains had come yet, and moving people across the U.S. was difficult. There were no cars, no airplanes, no high-speed internet. Times were very different back then, and the government and the Army didn't know exactly what they would find out west, like in Fort Stockton, where you guys live. So the camels were given the job of carrying water and camp supplies for the Army as folks moved west through the desert. Twice in 1859 and 1860, the camels called Fort Stockton home. Right there in your hometown. Can you imagine, before there was a Walmart or a Dickies or a Stripes? The Army was there, and they were using all the normal animals you might think. Horses, mules, even oxen. Oxen are cows that are trained to pull wagons or pull farm implements like a plow. But they also decided to use these camels. And the camels become a part of your town's history right there in Fort Stockton. In fact, in the summer of 1859, 24 camels, we learned in Camels for Uncle Sam, 24 camels called Fort Stockton home. They had set off from San Antonio, but they were bound west to explore the area that we now call the Big Bend, around the Rio Grande. And there were a couple of engineers whose last name were Hartz and Eccles. They had been given the job to explore the area and see if there were good ways to get down to the Rio Grande, to get down to the border, which was the line between the US and Mexico. And it's a desert. We don't have to tell you guys in Fort Stockton that, right? So the camels were right at home. The idea was that the camels could fend for themselves. They could eat whatever grows out in the desert. The Army wouldn't have to carry hay or oats or any type of supplies for the camels because the camels could exist off of what grew naturally out in the desert. At the same time, of course, the camels would be spared that extra weight on their saddles. They wouldn't have to carry extra stuff for them, only stuff for the horses, the mules, and the soldiers. Now, both these fellows, Hartz and Eccles, who were in charge of the camels, they weren't sure about the camels when they first got them. They'd never worked with camels, they knew horses and mules, and they weren't sure how it was going to work out. But later on, after the expeditions were over, 1859 to 1860, Lieutenant Hartz wrote in his journal, like a diary, he said about the camels, the patience, endurance, and steadiness which characterized the performance of the camels during the march is beyond praise. What that means is that Hartz really liked the camels. And what was not to like? You had a big, strong animal that could carry more than a horse or a mule, could go all day long without a drink. Maybe they'd go 3 days, 5 days, maybe possibly a week without a drink. Could you do that? What would happen to you if you were to go that long without a drink out in the desert? Yeah, because you're not a camel. I hope you enjoyed our time together, and I appreciate you taking the time to check in with us today for the Fort Stockton Public Library's Tales and Tales Summer Reading Program. We'll end with one more tale. See you guys.